Well, the esteemed audience knows I'm going to ask sooner or later, so now seems to be a good place. Diana Rodriguez Wallach, have you ever seen a flying saucer and or a ghost and or a demon?
So I have tons of ghost stories. So I have not seen a flying saucer, and I hope I have not seen a demon. But my first house that my husband and I bought when we were in our 20s was in South Philadelphia. It was in a Queen Village. It was built in 1832. Okay, so it's one of those old Philadelphia brick houses. It was called a Trinity. So that means there's one room per floor. The kitchen is in the basement, and then there's a living room, and then a bedroom, and then another, what was a bedroom. And they had a back courtyard that had an outhouse, which I know because there was a sinkhole and all of our outhouses sunk on the whole block, and it was really creepy. So it was a very old house, and it had like original floors, original fireplaces in every room. And when we moved in, we were like, wow, how many people do you think died here? Like, my goodness, this house is 175 years old. Not just a casual person died here. Like, this must have racked up some bodies. So we kind of like made jokes about it as we were fixing up the house, and it did need a lot of work. And we did a lot of great things, renovations and stuff. Then one day I'm sitting upstairs, and I may have actually been working on what became my first novel at the time. I'm by myself, and I hear music playing. It's piano music. And initially I thought, oh my God, my neighbor Vicky has gotten really good. Wow, like she sounds amazing because she had a piano. And then, like any good horror movie, I realized that the sounds are coming from inside the house. So I go downstairs, and I realized I had a boombox in my bedroom. So this was the early 2000s. For those of you who don't know what a boombox is, it was those old stereos that had the radio and the CD player and the tape deck. And every morning before I went to my day job, I would listen to the morning radio, and like the Z Morning Zoo type of thing. So if you know about boom boxes, if you leave it on the radio function, you turn it off and you go to work, that's where it should be when you turn it back on when you get home. So out of nowhere, when I'm sitting in this house by myself, the radio had turned itself on, had switched to the CD function, and had started playing. And it started playing a CD that I had in there. It was only a 1-disc CD player, and it was classical piano music because I was picking out these ceremony songs for our upcoming wedding. So Bach's Air on a G String starts playing. And I investigated everything on this radio. It did not have a sleep function. It did not have an alarm. It did not have a power surge or anything like that. All the lights were working. Everything was fine. So I tell my, soon-to-be husband what happens. He doesn't believe me. He does not believe in ghosts. He's Jewish. He doesn't believe in, the demonic or spirits or any of that. So he thinks I'm crazy. Okay. So then I start coming home from work, and randomly, certain days, not every day, but certain days, the radio would be on, and it would have been switched to the CD function, and the CD had clearly played while I was at work, even though when I had left that day, I had been listening to the radio and turned it off. So I'm like, somehow this radio is turning itself on. Then one day, my husband comes home. He's in the bedroom. He's changing the sheets. It's on a Saturday now, not a work day. And all of a sudden, the radio turns on. It starts playing Bach's Air on a G String. He comes booking upstairs, screaming, completely freaked out. He finally believes me. He's like, yes, something's going on. I don't know why this radio is playing. So I tell one of my friends who's all into like the spiritual new wave type of stuff. She's like, ghosts just want to be acknowledged. They just want you to talk to them. So I'm like, okay. So first I have to tell you, we actually tested out our theory. We took out the piano music and we put in Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. And we left it in there for several weeks. And not once did the radio play. Not once did I come home from work and find that the radio was on or the CD had played. Okay. So I come back. We were like, let's do it another try. We put the piano music back in. Instantly, it starts happening all over again. So I decide to take my friend's advice. I walk into my house after work when my husband's not there to hear me do this and embarrass me. And I literally start talking to the ghosts in my living room. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? I just want to thank you for having us here in your house. I know you guys have probably been here a long time. And it's clear that you love piano music. It probably was the music that you listened to when you lived here. If you could just play the CD only on Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5 when I'm at work, that's totally fine. But if you could not play the CD, while I'm at home, I would appreciate it because it really freaks me out. So I say that it never happened again. I would come home from work, I would find that the CD had played, but it never turned on again while my husband and I were in the house to experience it or witness it turn on. So it absolutely worked. Also, when I lived in that same house, it is the only time in my life that I ever sleepwalked. So never before, never since had I ever been a sleepwalker. These Trinities, like I said, are one room per floor, and they are cavernous spiral staircases with the little triangular steps that your foot barely fits on top of. So you can trip up these stairs on a good day completely sober, okay? And I would wake up and find myself on the top floor of my house, sitting back straight on my sofa, and I'd wake up and just like my hands folded on my lap, and I was sitting there. I'd walk downstairs to my bedroom, and I would see that my sheets had been peeled back in a perfect triangle. They're not rumpled, they're not tossed to the floor. Doesn't look like I threw them off. It looked like somebody, like your mom, just peeled them back and guided you out of bed. And this happened several times when I was living in that house. Has never happened to me since. And let's see, I woke up once also in this house where I felt like somebody was sitting on my chest. And my eyes were open. And I remember having this thought, like, my eyes are open. I am awake, but I cannot move. I absolutely could not move. And I'm looking around, and it felt like there was just somebody full out sitting on my chest. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I'm blinking. And all of a sudden, after a few moments, it goes away. Whatever it was got off my chest, and I could breathe again. And I told my family what happened. And my sister had recently gotten married. Her husband is Thai. He's from Thailand, and they have a strong belief in spirits there. And he knew exactly what I was talking about and knew about it so much, like he has a word for it in his language to describe the experience of a ghost sitting on your chest. He's like, oh, absolutely. There was definitely a ghost sitting on your chest. He's like, that happens all the time in Thailand. And so that happened to me there. And I Googled it. I mean, I know there are certain things called like sleep paralysis, but in those instances, the person is in a dream state. Like they're seeing a dream world around them. They see spiders crawling up the walls or something. That was not the case. I was awake, and when the sensation lifted off my chest, I was still awake. It wasn't like I had the experience of just suddenly waking up. And then I think the last thing that happened frequently in that house was I dreamt frequently of my grandparents who had passed away. And it wasn't just like that I dreamt of them. I dreamt of them as they looked when they were very young, when I did not know them. And I had not seen a lot of pictures of them looking like that. And they were just holding conversations with me. They knew I was getting married. They wanted to congratulate me. They wanted to apologize for missing my bridal shower and just talk to me about my life. And it was very surreal, and it happened frequently, so much. I remember telling my mom it. The creepiest one was my grandmother, who had lived with me all through my life growing up from 4th grade on, came to me in one dream and told me she knew how I was going to die. And she asked me if I wanted to know how that was going to happen. And I was, in my dream state thinking of like the space-time continuum, like, do I really want to know? If I find out, is that going to screw up space and time? And I said I wanted to know. Instantly, the dream changed, and I was in my childhood bedroom, and somebody was trying to break into my house. And I knew who the person was in my dream. It was an attacker that I knew. I run upstairs to call 911, and I can't get through. And I hear the person come in, I lock the door, and I lie really loudly into the phone saying, oh, I hear the sirens coming. I hear you coming. I hear the police. And when the person on the other side of the door hears this, he leaves. And so I woke up and I wrote the dream down. I'm like, man, if someone ever breaks into my house and I can't get through to 911, like, this is how I'm going to save my life. And the dream completely freaked me out. And to this day, since I have left that house, I have never dreamt of my grandparents since. So I feel like something was going on in that house, that there was a thinner veil between me and the other world. And all of these experiences, you know, were legit. They were some sort of existence, that something else is out there. And it was definitely in this old haunted house.
Do experiences like that, plus all the research you've done now on possession and exorcisms, does that at least have the effect of taking unbelief off the table? Like, nope, I don't need to struggle with that particular aspect of faith. For sure, this is a thing, so we can be done with that aspect.
Yes, I mean, I do believe. So I'll say like the scariest horror movies are The Exorcist or Paranormal Activity. You know, something, when I saw Paranormal Activity, I couldn't go home. Like I needed a minute, like we had to get a drink. I'm like, we were living in that haunted house at the time. I'm like, I can't go back to that haunted house right now. I need a second to like digest what I just saw here. So when you're coming from a place where you believe it, absolutely, it's way easier to write from the point of view of a believer than it is to write to be a doubter. You know, whether I can convince a non-believer to be scared or to believe in all this, I don't know. You know, like if that's not where your brain is at, I could say like my husband thought my books were scary, my book was scary, and he was completely freaked out. And he's not as much of a believer. He's way more of a skeptic than I am. But yes, I mean, I think if you're coming from a place of belief, horror is a little easier. And like I said, you're going to write what scares you, or otherwise, what is the point? You know, so if it's something that interests you or something that scares you, then your own fears will more authentically come through your characters than if it's something that you don't at all connect with. So bringing your own fear into your book, I think, helps it come through to the reader.
The nice thing about horror novels, there's many nice things about horror novels. They're so wonderful. But what makes a horror novel a little bit unique among the many mediums you can experience horror is that if I'm watching a movie or playing a video game or watching The Conjuring, the moment the CGI is a little bit rough, which it is in a few spots, I'm like, oh, I don't believe this anymore.
Yeah.
Or that's, I can see why you might think that's scary in Resident Evil, but I don't think it's scary. Whereas with a novel, I have to participate with you. I have to build part of that world or in my head, or it doesn't work. And so in my head, I'm also bringing all that weird stuff that happened to me from childhood, all that memories, and I'm helping you build something that is uniquely terrifying to me. Mm-hmm. Which is just something, an observation I just love about horror fiction. You have to participate.
Absolutely. But to me, I feel like there's a little bit of an occupational hazard as a consumer of horror now. I'm now more easily scared by TV shows and movies because that is not what I do. So I'm not watching the movie and thinking, oh, that's an interesting camera angle. I wonder how they pulled off that, you know, edit effect or something. Like I'm not caught up in the minutia. Whereas when I'm reading a horror novel now, I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting sentence. Or, wow, I love how they set the mood in the scene. Look at the sensory detail here. This really has me going. You know, so I'm sort of looking at the mechanics of the book and I'm a little into work mode. Like I can never just read a book now. I'm constantly looking at the sentences and critiquing it, whether I want to or not.